In part 1, where we were in the meeting of the Brazilian Sailboat Cruisers Association, we met Paul and Rachel Chandler, a couple of English sailors passing by the Brazilian coast. A few years before, they were kidnapped by pirates from Somalia, a country known for intense piracy activity, still today.
Our captors took us ashore and took us inland in Somalia and kept us in various locations in the bush and in little villages in central Somalia. And our government's position is not to negotiate with kidnappers. So it was left to our family to answer the calls for millions of dollars of ransom.
The government just don't talk to those people.
Well, the policy is not to pay ransom. Whether that is strictly upheld is neither really here nor there. That is their policy. And they extend that to the level of not even being prepared to talk about it. So although the British government did give some support to our families, they would, for example, have meetings to discuss the crisis with our families, and when the families said, "Now we want to talk about negotiating the ransom," the bureaucrats would get up and walk out of the room. They just cannot be seen to having anything to do with it. And we accept that. It's a reasonable position for a government to take. But there is a private sector which works to resolve kidnappings, and if the government had had the wit to put our family in touch with those guys, rather than letting them flounder for several months, it would have been much appreciated.
How many times they kept you?
They kept us for 13 months in all.
388 days.
And our family negotiated with them, and after about 7 months, our family handed over $440,000, expecting our release. They thought they had an agreement. But then the pirates didn't release us, and so our family were left not knowing what to do.
Nobody would answer the phone on the pirate side or anything.
No, the pirates were playing a very long game.
There was a very nice man, a very nice Somali man, who had left his country in the 1990s and had set up in East London. And his son went home to him after school one day and said, "Daddy, I'm ashamed to play soccer with my mates at school," because it was all over the British media then. "And can't you do something?" And his daddy did. He left London, he went out to Africa. He spent 7 months of his life waking up his old contacts, getting in touch with the families around that area of Somalia, and eventually he himself turned up in Somalia and secured our release.
And it was only this man called Dahir who was able to resolve that in the end. And so that was another 6 months after our family had done all they could that we were released.
And how much of this information you had when you were kept?
We didn't. We knew that we knew that our family, when our family was negotiating with them, we knew a certain amount about that going on. We were allowed to talk to our family to beg for money, essentially. That was the only time we were allowed to talk to people, was to beg for money.
When you had not feedback.
But we really didn't know. We knew that they were handing over the money after 7 months, and we expected to be released. Everything was supposed to be organized. And so for us, when we knew that the money had been handed over and they didn't release us, it was devastating. It was very, very hard to suppress our anger and frustration and just keep calm, because when you're in a situation like that, the only thing you can do is to try to keep calm and just not to worry about things that you can do nothing about. And to us it was really a complete surprise then, after 13 months, that we suddenly were released. We felt that they must be getting to the stage that our captors were getting frustrated and fed up. But we couldn't see a way out because they're very naive people, and they just wanted the money, and they couldn't understand that our family couldn't pay more money.
With absolutely no intention to underestimate the UN military aid provided by many countries in the area. In the end of the day, the hero was a Somali taxi driver living in London. This makes us think about what drives so many people in Somalia into piracy activity.
Cultural difference and ignorance, and most of the gang who were holding us, there were over 30 of them, most of them were youngsters, and they were ignorant, but they believed what they were told by the few people who said everybody in the West is rich.
Was it any moment that, obviously you were in a terrible situation, there's no other way to think of that, but that you had any time of relation with someone that was keeping you, that like a guy that was not so evil, that you have some that you are some trust was made?
Most of them weren't evil. One or two of them were. Particularly when we were separated. We were held separately for over 3 months. And so we had subsets, factions of the gang. And relationships with them were never going to happen with Rachel, I think, because of sex thing. And also because she had a nasty faction guarding her. The 8 who were guarding me were what I call the nice faction, and yes, I did develop a sort of relationship with them. We could get by because at that time I was thinking, maybe this is going to be 3 or 4 years, and if I'm going to survive that, I'm going to have to do my best to get on somehow. And I wouldn't say, I mean, there was certainly no question of friendship with any of them, but there were nicer ones and nastier ones, and there was one quite magical evening when just before sunset I was doing my daily yoga routine and there was a noise behind me, and I turned round and there were 6 Somali gangsters doing the same moves behind me in the yoga class. You know, you can't make it up.
There were strange moments. I mean, as Paul says, as a woman, they could never relate to me. They couldn't understand Paul's attachment to me because their attachment to their women is very much just, there's no real communication between them as far as we can tell. I mean, it's like one young man, he said he wanted to come to the West with us when we were released, and we knew that he had a wife and at least 2 children because he had told us when his children had been born, and he was happy. But we said, well, what about your wife and children? He said, it doesn't matter. But there were many moments during the time we were held captive where our guards showed a lot of kindness to us. It was really quite odd. But again, it was the fact that there was no animosity towards us. It was our family who were supposed to be raising the money, who were the bad people. We were just the hostages. We were just pawns. We were just the people that they had to keep alive to get the money that they wanted. And sometimes they would bring us small things which to them were probably quite valuable. I mean, one time they found an ostrich nest, and they brought us an ostrich egg. I've never seen an ostrich egg before. And then they cooked it, and we got a big share of it. We got the lion's share of this ostrich. It was quite bizarre, and they were so pleased that we were so delighted by this small present.
So they were only ordinary guys. And one night, when I was in the village, I had the room, the brick-built or stone-built room to sleep in, but all the guards, 8 or 9 of them, just lie on the desert outside. And there was a little privy, and to make my way to that, I had to wend my way through without falling over any of them. And it was dark, and they knew I didn't have my contact lenses in at night, so I was practically blind as a bat. So I came out of my door and started making my way gingerly across. And one of them came up and took me gently by the arm and escorted me to the privy. and waited outside and escorted me back. And there was nothing other than pure helpfulness in that gesture.
Helpfulness is also what we saw in the event we were, with lots of tips for new sailors.
Olha, encontro da BBC é essa reunião que nós fazemos aqui. É uma troca de experiências, principalmente, entre esse pessoal que navega por esse Brasil e navega aqui dentro da Bahia, da Ilha Grande, de lugares pequenos e grandes, essa troca de informações. Nós patrocinamos esses pequenos cruzeiros, grandes cruzeiros, para que eles percam o medo de navegar. Coloquem a família, amigos nos barcos e saiam para navegar. Põe o barco para andar, esse é o espírito.
It was a very special moment for me to be with so many people that enjoy our show. Even more awesome was to know that some people came from other states just because of us. This was a very huge support for us. With the help of their new friend born in Somalia, Paul and Rachel Chandler, after 388 days, had one with more favorable winds.
It was an exciting day. First, we had got sort of wind of it over a few days, but we didn't raise our hopes too much. But then one afternoon we were told to pack our bags, and one of the guys who had a machine gun and belts over his shoulders, and he was a big guy, and he came up offering his hand to shake it and say goodbye with a big grin on his face. It's quite, well, there were several bizarre scenes like that, because they're people.
Like not personal, just music.
No,
Exactly.
well, it wasn't at all personal.
No, it wasn't at all personal.
And so we were bundled into cars, driven across the country through the night again. And then in the morning we were forced to sleep in one of the cars. In the morning we were let out, pollutions, and put my lenses in, and I stood up, and there was this chap walking towards us, who was to here, holding up his British passport. I've come to take you home. That wasn't freedom, but that was the moment, because we were still in Somalia, and the next 6 or 7 hours until we actually flew over the border into Kenya, that was when we were free. So that was such a moment.
It is difficult to reconcile the fact that what they did was to us quite evil, to deprive people of their liberty and to hold on to us for so long. But on the other hand, to them, they seem to be able to reconcile it with their faith and Muslim faith and all that they're taught, that somehow it's what they do. I mean, in Somalia, kidnapping between different tribes isn't unusual. And so, in some sense, kidnapping a foreigner is presumably just acceptable. But the other side of the coin is that what I did find difficult to accept was their contempt for people who did work hard and make a living. I mean, in Somalia, we did, at times, we did come across people who, like young men who were goat herds, or other people who worked and grew a few beans, and those people were held in contempt by the pirates because they considered themselves as armed people superior, and I found that contemptible. As you say, there is no excuse for there are poor people all around the world who work hard, who would never lift a finger, would never dream of stealing from other people, and this behavior just is contemptible.
This event gave another taste for freedom now when you are sailing.
Yes, I mean, it's fantastic. That's the great thing about freedom, and when we went back to Britain, back to what I suppose for us people expect to say is normality. People would say, how nice is it to be back to a normal life? And I would say, well, when we go sailing again, then we'll be back to normal life. And that was a process that we went through that was helped by a lot of people, particularly by the Royal Navy for rescuing Lynn Rival, who's here with us in Brakui. But to go back into so-called civilized Western society and realise that so much is taken for granted, and it's given me, apart from broadening my outlook, even more, it just makes me think that we, and here in Brazil as well, you're civilized, you take for granted that, except in some areas, you can go out at night without being armed and without worrying unduly. Okay, we've all got nasty areas, we have them in London. But in general, you can do that because we have law and order. In Somalia, they don't. And we take it for granted. And I have the utmost respect for all the guys in uniform who maintain that for us, and for the generations before me who established that state of affairs. It doesn't hold over a lot of the world. But then, so we, as you say, we enjoy the freedom of travelling on our boat. It makes us probably in some ways more careful than we were. But we've always, I think, taken account of whatever risks we're likely to encounter. And I don't think we would do anything any differently at all than what we did that time leaving the Seychelles. But we love every day of freedom now.
We are so lucky to live in a time that piracy is just a remote exception in a few places. The sea is most of the time much more peaceful than the seas. When sailing back home and seeing one of the guys that came to the event just because of our show already mixed it in and sailing, a poem from Mari Quintana, a Brazilian poet, came to my mind. One day it's dawn, and I will come to an end. Whatever it has to be, it will be. Dying, I don't care so much about it. The hell is stop living.
This is a section of the boom, the main boom of Lynn Rival, and we keep it because every time we think, oh well, it was just another little adventure, we look back and we think, this is the entry, that's the entry hole from a bullet from an AK-47 assault rifle, and that's the exit where it came out the other side. And that brings it home to me that it was a violent little interlude. A bit too much excitement.